Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. In one of the Umrah trips of the Prophet ﷺ, one of the companions didn't enter into a state of ihram. And this was pretty common practice for certain reasons. And that companion went and he hunted. Now, we know that when a person is in that state, they can't hunt. And so this companion, since he wasn't in ihram, he went and he hunted. And he caught himself some game, and he slaughtered it and he cut it up, and he went to the Prophet ﷺ and he presented some meat to the Prophet. He wanted to give that as a gift to the Prophet, and that was something very normal back then, very cultural. They would go and they would give a gift to a family in the form of food or meat. And so since the Prophet ﷺ was in a state of ihram, he didn't accept it from the companion. He said, I don't need it. Now imagine you want to give a gift to the Prophet ﷺ. Oh, you're going to be giving it with your heart. This is the Prophet, I want to give him something. I feel so happy that I can present something to the beloved ﷺ. And so when the Prophet rejected it, that really brought sorrow to the companion. It was observable in his face. And so the Prophet looks and he notices that man looks really sad. He goes up to the companion and says, I didn't accept it, not because I don't want it, but because I'm in a state of ihram and I can't accept it. He explained why he behaved a certain way. Before he explained why, the companion was in a state of sorrow. Why? Because he misunderstood why the Prophet ﷺ rejected it. So the Prophet ﷺ took it upon himself to explain to him why, so that he removes that sorrow and he removes that misunderstanding. Explaining why is an integral part to building a strong family. Because when I interact with someone and I understand why they do certain things, it helps me trust that person's decision. And when I see over and over again this person is behaving in a logical way, in a practical way, in a way that makes sense, in a way that considers my well-being, my best interest, then I develop trust for that individual. So explaining why is very important to building those relationships. It's so important to the human psyche that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly explains why things are the way they are. Why did Allah create the heavens and the earth? Allah explains why, لِتَعْلَمُوا, so that you get to know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. When Allah talks about certain rulings in fiqh, certain practical things that we need to do, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us why that's the case. Why is alcohol and gambling haram? Well, He says, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَن يُوقِعَ بَيْنَكُمُ الْعَدَاوَةَ وَالْبَغْضَاءَ فِي الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ وَيَصُدَّكُمْ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَعَنِ الصَّلَاةِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clarifies why these things are haram. Because the shaitan wants to create division between you, and he wants you to forget Allah, and he wants to distract you from salah. He explains why. Even when Allah punishes a people, He explains why. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ كَفَرُوا بِآيَاتِنَا. That is because they disbelieved in our actions. That is because they were unjust people. That is because they were fasiqeen. He explains why. So if Allah, in His grandeur, who He Himself says, لَا يُسْأَلُ عَمَّا يَفْعَلُ وَهُمْ يُسْأَلُونَ. No one has the authority to ask Allah why He does certain things. Rather, He is the one who asks us. Even then, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains to us why. Why this, why that? How come? To build that trust. So as a parent, as a sibling, as anyone who's interacting with other people within your family, you really need to explain why. Or else in the mind of a child, they cannot rationalize why the father said that, why that's the rule, why the mother told me that. They cannot rationalize it on their own. And very often they misunderstand. And now they think that I have parents who are just crazy. They're irrational. I can't trust my parents. It's not because the parents are doing things that are irrational. It's because the parents didn't take the time to explain why they tell them to do these things. Even between siblings, why are you doing that? Husband and wife, why is that the case? Explain why to one another. And inshallah, you will begin to see eye to eye more and more. And that will help reduce conflicts, help reduce disagreements between each other, and help build that trust, which is the core part or a core part of relationships. Well, how can we explain why? Well, there's the attempt of explaining why, but there is an effective way of explaining why. And one of the most common mistakes that I see, especially in spouses, is that the husband, the man, always tries to rationalize what he's doing, while the woman sees it from a different lens. And maybe it's the opposite. Maybe the husband is in an emotional state, and the wife is trying to explain from a rational angle. When you see someone in a state of emotions, what reaches their mind and their heart is an emotional why. Make the why, the answer to why, your explanation for why, an emotional one. And the Quran teaches us this. When Abu Bakr was infuriated by his relative who slandered his daughter Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. And this is a man, a relative of Abu Bakr, who Abu Bakr was financially assisting. He was a poor man. Abu Bakr was financially assisting this man. And he ends up slandering his own daughter. I mean, that's just impolite in the maximum meaning of the word impolite. And so Abu Bakr, being mad, defending his daughter, cuts his cousin or his relative off from his financial assistance. Why? He did that emotionally. So what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? He says, وَلَا يَأْتَلِ أُولُو الْفَضْلِ مِنْكُمْ وَالسَّعَةِ أَن يُؤْتُوا أُولِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ وَالْمُهَاجِرِينَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَلْيَعْفُوا وَلْيَصْفَحُوا أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَن يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, let not the person who Allah has given money to and who has good manners and good akhlaq, let them not take oath by Allah that they're not going to assist their relative or a poor person or someone who did hijrah for the sake of Allah. Forgive and let go. Forgive and move on. O Abu Bakr, the verse doesn't literally say this, but I mean, it's initially stated to Abu Bakr. O Abu Bakr, wouldn't you love Allah to forgive you? See, that's an emotional response. When someone comes to you and says, Allah wants to forgive you, it doesn't arouse our rationale. It arouses our emotions. Yes, I want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive me. So when Abu Bakr was in an emotional state, Allah told him, don't cut your cousin off, don't cut your relative off. But understanding Abu Bakr is in an emotional state, Allah explains why. He doesn't just tell Abu Bakr, go back to giving him money and that's it, just because I said so. Allah gives him the why he should do that, and He gave him a why that matches his state, an emotional why. And Abu Bakr, when he heard this verse, he said, yes, I would love for Allah, I do love Allah to forgive me. So he forgave that man and he returned to giving him financial assistance. When you see the person in front of you is in an emotional state, explain why in a way that entices their emotions. But if you see them in a rational state, explain the why in a way that is rational. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us this as well. When Shu'aib was talking to his people, Ya qawmi, awfu al-mikyala wal-mizana bil-qist. O my people, make sure you are fair in the way you weigh products. Don't steal, don't con other individuals. And the reason why you shouldn't do this is baqiyatullahi khayrun lakum. Rationalize it. What Allah leaves for you, your ability to sustain an economy when the scales are fair and just, when people trust each other, rationally speaking, leads to better economies, stronger economies. Right? That's a rational response. Also, he says, وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُمْ وَلَا تَعْثَوْا فِي الْأَرْضِ مُفْسِدِينَ. This conning creates mischief on earth. People begin to steal from one another. There is no trust. Right? That is a rational approach. And then he continues and says, وَيَا قَوْمِ لَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شِقَاقِي أَن يُصِيبَكُمْ مِثْلُ مَا أَصَابَ قَوْمَ نُوحٍ أَوْ قَوْمَ هُودٍ أَوْ قَوْمَ صَالِحٍ. O my people, the way you're behaving will lead to your demise. The way the injustices of the people before you led to their demise. All of this is rational. He even says, right, Allah has وَرَزَقَنِي مِنْهُ رِزْقًا حَسَنًا. Allah, look, my people, Shu'aib is telling them, I'm not conning you. I'm in business. I'm being fair and just in the way I deal in business. Yet, look at my financial situation. I'm well-to-do. This is a rational approach. So when you see the person rational, give them a rational why. When you see that they are emotional, give them an emotional why. And inshallah, with that, explaining why will build that confidence in one another And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawfiq. Share your experiences about how you were able to get through to someone you were in conflict with, how you were able to explain something that is really important to them, and how that built the trust between you and that individual. We'd love to hear from your experiences and learn from one another. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum everybody. Thank you for watching. If you're finding benefit in these videos, remember that every day throughout the month of Ramadan, we'll be releasing a new video. Our goal is to build a stronger family, especially in our times today when the family unit is really dissolving. It's so important for us as Muslims and to serve as a role model for all of humanity. Share these videos, like, drop a comment, and we'll see you at the next video. Bismillah.